everyone, welcome to KINETICS. Today, we are speaking with Dr. Rahul Walawalkar, co-founder and president of Net Zero Energy Transition Association, NETRA, and partner at Walawalkar Enterprises LLP. Rahul brings deep experience across energy policy, industry transformation, and international collaborations. Energy today is no longer just about power plants and tariffs. It shapes economies, geopolitics, and national strategy. In this episode, we'll talk about storage, scale, and sovereignty in India's new energy economy. To start, Mr. Walawalkar, energy increasingly sits at the intersection of economies, geopolitics, and national security. How do you see this global transition unfolding? And where does India stands today?
So first of all, thank you, Komal, for hosting me here at the Pune Knowledge Cluster. It's an honor. Now, coming straight to your question, I think energy is essential for everything what you're doing, right? If you see globally the data, the economic development of countries is linked to actually the energy usage. Now, the good part where we are in right now, where India is going through this transition as compared to what has happened in developing countries or China, we have an amazing opportunity where a lot of more sustainable energy sources are available to us. And thanks to the Honorable Prime Minister's vision, we are very aggressively going ahead with adoption of those technologies. So we feel that we have a wonderful opportunity where in India, instead of thinking about what we're doing as a leapfrogging, using a term which Dr. Mashelkar, who is our mentor, has mentioned, we can actually pole vault into a developed economy stage and not repeat what Europe or US or China has done for their economic growth. And we also now, especially with what is happening in the Middle East war and other thing, I think energy security is also becoming a essential part, right? Right now, one of the biggest challenge for India is that we are still dependent on 70-80% plus in terms of the imports for petroleum resources. So if we can actually transition towards the sustainable sources, utilize wind, solar more, then we can actually not just be a more sustainable economy, but we can also be a more resilient economy and more secure economy.
Hmm. So you mentioned about renewable resources, and these
Yes.
are not enough alone.
Yes.
So India has made progressive and impressive progress in renewable capacity over
Yeah.
last decade. Would you say the conversation is now shifting from generation to systems integration, and how all these pieces of the grid, demand, and markets fit together?
Oh, that's a very important question. And yes, we are seeing this transition. So I've been involved with Central Electricity Regulatory Commission as well as Central Electricity Agency on looking at many of the system level and planning issue for last more than 10 years. And I see now very clearly a understanding that renewables have already become the cheapest and most cost effective energy source for the grid. So there is no longer any question about can we uh, should we use more renewables. There is that pathway is very clear, and India has already done a lot in last 10 years where we have now crossed 200 gigawatt of renewables, in fact crossed 250 gigawatt of renewables, as well as we have a very clear pathway for 2030 for getting to 500 gigawatt, and by 2035 almost 800 gigawatt of renewables in the grid. But now the biggest challenge what the system operators are facing is that renewables, while being the cheapest energy source in terms of the levelized cost of energy, they are variable resources. The grid, the way traditionally is designed is that there is demand happening and then you use generation to try to meet that. Now, since generation is variable, you need to take into account what other resources you need for balancing the variable renewables, as well as what changes you can do on the demand side to bring demand flexibility to the table, where again, thanks to the improvements in technology in terms of the IoT, in terms of now this whole energy internet concept and other thing, there are a lot more possibilities in terms of how can use demand response and other thing to also try to find out solutions on the demand flexibility rather than only looking at supply side balancing. And at a policymaker level, at least there is a good understanding. But to get everything together, get the industry ready, get the financing, investments ready, there is still a lot of coordination required. And we do see right now there is a focus is more on that, where, for example, CEA has almost announced that all new addition of renewables will only happen in a mode what is called as FDRE, flexible and dispatchable renewable energy, where renewables will have to follow the load shape which the distribution companies want. Because we are already seeing at the electricity markets like Indian Energy Exchange, where we are seeing now that during daytime the prices of energy are almost going below 1 rupee, or sometimes it could even be closer to zero. Whereas in the evening time, when the solar is going down, the prices are increasing and hitting the cap of 10 rupee, or even the demand is spilling into the high price market where prices are going above even 15 rupees. So this is a problem which, as more and more renewables get added, is going to continue to increase. And that's where technologies like battery energy storage or pumped hydro and other technologies will have a bigger role in the grid in coming years.
Wow. So I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to achieve the goals. India
Yeah.
will be able to achieve the goals.
Yes.
Yeah, for a long time, storage was treated just as an ancillary infrastructure or an add-on on the
Correct.
grid. What the question is, what changed and why has storage suddenly become a central to how we design energy systems?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm just smiling because you said why storage has become suddenly, whereas having been on the other side, I have been having this discussion now for last 15 years. So the change hasn't happened fast enough. Whereas from my global experience of having worked on similar projects and policies in US and other places almost 20 years back, I felt that in fact actually 10 years back this discussion should have resulted into action. In fact, Maharashtra was one of the leading states that time, with Mr. VP Raja as the MERC chairman, and Mr. Sonavne as a technical member. There was a committee set up under the Smart Grid Coordination Council on looking at specifically renewable integration challenges. Similarly, at a central government level, as early as in 2013-14, under the guidance of Dr. Satish Agnihotri, who was that time the MNRE secretary, there was a national standing committee on energy storage was set up. So a lot of these things have been in discussion for really long time. And finally, now what has happened is that that time renewables were costing significantly high. Wind was at 5 to 6 rupee per kilowatt hour. Solar was at 15, 16 rupees per kilowatt hour. So that time, I think people had this approach that, okay, let's first wait for renewable prices to come down. But now that renewable has started crossing 10%, 15% in terms of the energy contribution, now people are realizing that there is no more flexibility for ignoring energy storage into the planning. And that's the reason why this is coming to the fore, because although theoretically or from the policy point of view, renewables have a must-run status. That means you cannot actually curtail renewables for economic reason. Unfortunate reality is that most of the states renewables are getting curtailed left, right, and center. We have seen some individual cases where more than 50, 60, 70% of the output from renewables is getting curtailed because of transmission constraints or other issues. So basically there is no more need for grid to keep on adding just plain vanilla renewables, and grid does not have unlimited capacity to just absorb renewables because they are cheap. What you need is you need to make sure that you use the renewable energy in a way where it is matching the load patterns on the grid. And that's where this flexible and dispatchable renewables, where you integrate renewables with storage, is becoming more popular now.
Okay. So, yeah, with the storage gaining importance, we also see a major shift in how grids themselves are being reimagined,
Yeah.
as you said. So, at the same time, AI infrastructure, data centers, and rapid electrifications are all increasing energy demand.
Yes.
Does this change the way we think about grids? And you did mention about this, the storage, the flexibility centers in the next decade.
No, definitely. I'm already seeing tremendous opportunities with especially agentic AI in terms of how we manage and operate the grid. How traditionally we used to have the network operation centers or the SCADA systems, which is the supervisory control and data acquisition systems, how that those systems were used versus now with how integrating proper agentic AI frameworks into the entire grid monitoring, you can actually improve the reliability and flexibility of the grid to a large extent. A lot of the decisions where someone sitting physically had to take those decisions, watch the alerts, take certain actions, a lot of those processes can be completely automated. Plus, as I mentioned earlier, that now with a exponential reduction in cost of the power electronics and monitoring and as well as control technologies, now you can have many more distributed assets, not just in terms of the distributed generation with solar, but also in terms of the flexibility with more electric vehicles getting into the grid. You have a additional flexible load which is coming up where you can, with a small chip, you can decide when EV is getting charged or how fast it is getting charged. So lot more opportunities are available. Plus now the concepts like peer-to-peer trading are also being talked about with Bacon protocol and energy internet concept being popularized by Mr. Nandan Nilekani and others. So there are actually opportunity wise, I think technologically we don't need to wait anymore for any new technology. Although I'm a big fan of innovation, and I know that innovation is a continuous process. Change is only constant. So there will be amazing technologies which will be there in next 10 years. But we are at a stage where we don't need to wait for anything. It's like a smartphone, right? You know, a better smartphone will be available with better camera, more memory, more battery life in 2 years. But you're not going to switch back to a pager or a landline phone waiting for that. You will use the phone right now, you will get most value. So same thing right now, if you use the technologies at a stage where they are in, these technologies can be deployed commercially with a proper return, and you can keep on changing the way the grid is being handled. And especially many times with this whole AI and other thing, the discussion is more about the energy consumption of AI and is it going to destabilize the grid. But there also I feel that many times people are just extrapolating data without realizing how fast number of things are changing. Like for example, similar discussion we had seen in US back in 2007-8 when I was finishing my PhD, where that time with some of the data centers and other things coming up for e-commerce and other thing, there was a concern about how big the data center requirement and other thing will happen. But the chip design also became very, very efficient, very fast, and a lot of the projections which were put in at that time never materialized. Same thing we are seeing with now data centers. Some of the latest generation NVIDIA chips which are there, they can operate at almost 45 degree. But many of these data center racks are now coming with embedded energy storage which can take care of 5 minute backup directly at an individual rack level. So a lot of these type of innovation and changes which are happening, which will actually people will be surprised how efficiently AI growth can happen. And the other aspect which I would urge people to see it is, many times I see in news or even podcast, people quote, oh, doing one query on a chat GPT or a Claude is 50 times or 100 times more energy consuming than doing a Google search. The only fallacy in that argument is you are not getting the same output on doing a one Google query where against what you're doing with a one Claude or chat GPT query. When you're doing just a simple Google search, probably you would be spending half an hour, 1 hour going through 20, 30 sites, opening up those links, reading the information, try to figure out what to use and do it. Whereas here in one query, you are getting all those answers in a few seconds with either Gemini or Claude or ChatGPT or other LLMs. So it's wrong to compare those two queries just on energy consumption and saying because it is taking more energy, just on that basis it is bad. I feel that in terms of what AI, the kind of productivity improvements, the kind of benefits which it can bring to the table on the industrial automation, factories, supply chain optimization, other thing, I overall feel that AI is going to be a huge net positive as compared to the cost in terms of energy or investments what we are doing into it.
Yeah, so the sensitization has begun,
Yeah,
and people are quite aware now. And I'm glad people are speaking about the
sure.
difference between these two.
Yeah.
And yeah, I remember one thing is so when I used to generate images, and one of my friends used to definitely speak about this. Oh, you're using AI, and it's gonna consume a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, in fact, people are talking about data cooling centers more with respect to water
Hmm.
usage. Coming to the topic,
Yeah.
India is investing heavily in domestic clean energy manufacturing,
Yeah.
but beyond scale, more factories, more capacity, what actually builds enduring technological capability? What do companies or institutions, policymakers need to focus on as per you?
Okay. So deep question. So again, beyond investment in just technologies or manufacturing factories, again, one of the challenges is also the skilled workforce is a big challenge, right? And we are seeing it right now for many of the new areas which are coming up, like semiconductor chip industry or advanced battery industry, where India did not have a traditional expertise. Now, many of the plans which were although delayed are getting further delayed because we just don't have the right trained workforce available for even setting up the plants or operating, stabilizing the plant. Although most of the people assume that all these factories are very highly automated, another thing, stabilizing these factories, getting the yield right, making sure that your scraps are under control requires lot of process know-how and hands-on expertise, which you cannot just uh, achieve in a short while. And that's a part where I think we'll still need to be integrated very well with global supply chain, primarily with China. Even in terms of the workforce, we need to explore maybe training capabilities with India and other friendly countries like Japan, Korea, US, or Germany, where we need to make sure that we have a proper ability to either bring in trainers or experts from these countries, or maybe have a exchange program where Indian workforce goes to these countries, get some train, come back. We need to invest into public-private partnerships for setting up prototyping centers, so that a lot of the companies, what they are doing in-house, ultimately they may be doing in some component, and ultimately before that component gets adopted into the end commercial product, there is a lot of validation and other process know-how is required, and that may take longer time. So we need to work on those aspects as well.
Yeah, so much of the clean energy ecosystem still depends on few concentrated global supply chains, which you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
So, how do you think India about strategic dependencies in this sector, and how can we reduce the risk while we still remain competitive and connected to the global innovation?
Sure. So again, the supply chain dependency is going to be there, and it's a long-term process, right? There is no shortcut. You cannot solve this with just one government policy, one government mission, and achieve this. Uh, get rid of some of this dependency in a short time. So this needs to be like a 10-year plus kind of a journey. But at the same time, the good part is India has lot of expertise across different sectors, and one of the areas where, as a Net Zero Energy Transition Association, we are focusing on is try to map different technology transition, its manufacturing, its supply chain with other industrial supply chains which may be available for other sectors. For example, if you take example of wind industry benefited from supply chain for sailboat industry or industrial drives, or even steel construction industry. Same thing with solar industry was able to scale up because of the supply chain which existed for semiconductor industry in terms of the machinery and equipment making and other thing. And similar example from lithium ion battery, where the lithium ion battery manufacturing was able to scale up because of even expertise which came in from food processing industry or printing press industry and other areas. So if we can start doing such cross industry mapping, then actually you can try to find out alternative ways where you can reduce this time. Instead of having multi-decade transition, you can achieve this faster. The good part right now is that there are almost from the Indian government side, there are at least 7 to 8 ministries who are looking at these issues. So right from Ministry of Mines, Ministry of Heavy Industries, MNRE, MOP, Ministry of Science and Technology, Ministry of Electronics and IT, Niti Aayog, the PMO office, ANRF, everyone is aware of these issues and everyone is doing it. What through NETRA we are trying to do it is we are trying to coordinate these activities across multiple ministries, as well as in India we have bilateral partnership agreements with at least around 20 different countries in this space, but many times these bilateral agreements are handled by different ministries. So again, there is no coordination across these individual ministry initiatives and international collaboration. So through NETRA we are trying to bridge that gap and connect the dots to make this transition more easily available. But at the same time, I do firmly believe that we should not be scared of globalization. We should leverage the global ecosystem, because ultimately the climate change problem, what we are trying to solve, is a global problem, and we need a global and global scale solution. So we cannot take just 10 years, 15 years just because we want to do something locally. We need to learn from global experiences and then at the same time encourage the local capability development.
So, as we know that you have worked in policy, industry, and international collaborations, so where do you currently see the biggest gap between policy ambition and real world implementation in the India's energy landscape?
Yeah, so you are rightly said that there is a big gap in the ambition versus implementation. And I would say that is the biggest gap is in terms of maybe the enforcement of timelines, because many times it is happening that we set up an ambitious policy and then before we end up meeting the goals, although we are heading in the right direction, we end up setting something much more ambitious another 5 year 10 year down the line, and then whole the discussion shifts to that instead of addressing some of the gaps which already we know. So that's the area where we need to start paying attention to the timeliness. And the other gap which I see it is many times the policies get announced with a 10 year time horizon, with a end goal of where we want to be at end of 10 years, which is fine as an end goal, but many times that ends up creating a distraction for what we need to do in next 12 months, next 18 months. Many times this is all this sort of a moonshot goals which are announced, that oh, we want $100 battery, or we want $1,000 EV, or this is all fine as an aspirational goal and we should work on it. But if you end up saying that okay, even if a business case where at a $500 battery we can actually save money, we don't implement it because we feel that oh, there is a goal for $100, so instead of spending $500 I'll wait for 5 years, then actually that's a bad economic decision, because you are ultimately leaving that money on table and losing that 10 year window when you are actually not gaining the experience of implementing projects. There is a big gap, and I feel that we need to understand this process where many times we end up as a part of the policy just end up doing some pilots for sake of starting something without very clear thought process of how that pilot is going to lead to next stage. So Dr. Satish Agnihotri had a very good framework where any pilot which you announce need to have very clear technology or performance goals set up, and the pilot's objective is to prove that if the technology meets those performance goals, if that is met and demonstration is successful, then immediately next step should be there where you scale it up 5 times or 10 times, and then you take out the costs which are related to one-off pilot demonstration and achieve a 15-20% cost reduction. And if you demonstrate that yes, because you have now a working technology, you have taken out the one-time cost of engineering, so now you are able to bring down the cost, then immediately another 10x or 100x deployment roadmap should be ready, where you can now scale the manufacturing and bring down another 20%. If you do that, then you can get easily like a 50% cost reduction within 5 year period, rather than just praying and waiting for someone else to do something and we just benefiting from it. Like in India, luckily we have been fortunate that many of the technology scale ups what we could do in the renewables, where thanks to the work which happened in Europe, US, China, or Japan, Korea, and India has been a beneficiary of adopting those technologies or the scaled up manufacturing. And I think that we should not shy away from. But at the same time, if you really aspire to change India to become a global manufacturing hub, then we cannot just keep on waiting for 10 years for that to happen and then start manufacturing, because then industry is already at a disadvantage, where any country which has already scaled the technology has the ecosystem, has the scale advantage, where a new industry starting from scratch becomes very difficult. So we need to be proactive about and start doing things, starts getting into manufacturing at a small scale, and have a very clear pathway of how to provide access to market, access to certain minimum volumes, which will enable companies to invest more and scale their technologies.
Yeah, so of course, my next question was going to be about
Okay.
you talking about replication of global models.
Yeah.
But is there any example which has, I mean, impacted us and we have tried implementing that in our country?
In
Any
terms of,
global model in terms of the uh, India's ambition towards energy storage systems?
so we have learned a lot from US in terms of shaping many of the
Hmm.
policies in India. At the same time, sometimes again in the gap between that vision and implementation, we have fallen short. Like for
Mhm.
example, I was involved in setting up the pay for performance policies in
Mhm.
US, which opened up the ancillary service markets in US,
Mhm.
when some of the advanced batteries were costing 700 $800 per kilowatt hour, and that policy framework enabled the US market to open up way back in 2010 2012. So when in 2013, when I had founded the India Energy Storage Alliance and we started working on it, we felt that that would be like a great learning experience where we can apply the learning from US. And then Europe was just starting with fast frequency regulation deployments in UK at that time. We can actually start using it, and since India actually grid had a more power quality issues, the value was even more than in US for those same technologies. So we thought that India can start actually adopting and opening up market on it. Unfortunately, some of the policymakers and regulators or even the industry stakeholders did not realize the value of that, and they kept on focusing on cost and saying that, oh, whatever it is costing in US, in India we cannot afford it, and we didn't end up doing it. Same thing happened where maybe telecom is one sector where maybe it is a successful transition, where telecom sector actually saw the opportunity very quickly, and since they had a huge cost related to the diesel generation for backup and other thing, when companies like Reliance Jio started building their network, they made a strategic decision that they will only use advanced lithium ion batteries for backup and not put diesel generators, and that actually created a very successful market deployment in India, and gave the entry for lithium ion batteries. So I think there are many cases where we can learn from global. I think right now the latest learning, I would say, what we are trying to do with ANRA, Anusandan National Research Foundation, where we are trying to adopt many of the successful patterns from like National Science Foundation of US or similar models from other parts of the world. That's a good example, and I am right now really keeping my fingers crossed. And I think the Dr. Shivkumar Kalyanraman and his team at ANRF is doing a really good job with, I think, guidance both from the PSA as well as DST, and the way they are trying to build the systems and roll out the program with now RDI fund and many other activities. I have been very encouraged with the possibilities which is available with that. There is a lot of still coordination required, and that's where, as a Net Zero Energy Transition Association, we're trying to support NRF in bringing in industry to leverage these new platforms which are being made available by government.
Yeah. So, having worked across policy industry, what are the ingredients of truly successful innovation ecosystems in
Mhm.
energy,
Okay.
according to you?
Again, has a lot of deep questions. So, again, I believe that an innovation ecosystem has to be built by, one is flexibility, where you need to have a flexibility to fail. You need to have some basic infrastructure where every individual member does not have to try to invest very heavily in trying to create that. So you need accessibility to sort of the makers spaces or prototyping centers or facilities where people can come, do some quick prototype, try, fail, improve, learn from it, improve on it. And ultimately also access to capital, where you need to try to understand that everything what you do is not going to scale. So you need to have patient capital as well as capital which has a significant risk appetite to learn. Um, the only thing which I would say which is slightly different than the traditional mindset is there is many times in a venture industry there is this hope of finding a 100x return by betting on a winner, and sometimes it is called as spray and pray model, where okay, just try to give money to 100 and it doesn't matter if 99 fail. If one gives a 100x plus return, then you are already breaking even. I feel we need to put in little bit more rigor in selecting technologies, selecting pathways, and saying no to certain things where there is already writing is on the wall that there is a no path forward, and put that time and effort in technologies where there is a higher chance of success. So that rigor is very much required. Just because there is money available through grants or investors do not understand it and they are ready to make money available, it should not be seen as just a chance of taking risk on someone else's money. If we start paying the capital as well as the intellectual property and time, all three factors with a equal respect, then I think there are amazing opportunities available. I think the best case study I've seen in India in this term is the what Professor Junjunwala did at IIT Madras Research Park, and how they have built a good ecosystem. Now I feel that if they could do it without having access to any external ecosystem, just within one institute or outside the IIT Madras Institute as a separate entity, if we can actually leverage many existing manufacturing supply chain ecosystems which already exist in cities like Pune, Chennai, Coimbatore, and others, and actually make that innovation ecosystem where someone can think about something innovative, use the existing manufacturing or workforce or other skill set available in such clusters, we can actually grow and scale faster.
Hmm. So, looking ahead to 2035, which policy and investment decisions taken this decade will matter most for the India's energy future?
So right now, I'd say the NRF example I gave,
Hmm.
and this whole creation of the RDI fund, I think that is, I hope, will be a huge game changer from it. And the way they are doing about where they are inviting a lot of private participation of other funds so that the RDI fund can become an enabler, that would be a big change. And the other thing I feel is that the whole net zero by 2070 mission, which Prime Minister has already set up, where as long as people realize that the thing do not start in 2070, but the goal is to reach the end goal. So that means there are a lot of things which we need to do for different sectors in next 5 year 10 years so that we have a realistic chance of reaching the end goal. We will be in a good shape.
Yeah. So, thank you so much,
Sure. Thank you.
Dr. Walawalkar, for walking us through this complex and crucial moment in India's energy journey. From storage and systems integration to manufacturing sovereignty and innovations ecosystem. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming
Uh,
and giving us a time.
no, thank you, Komal. I enjoyed the discussion and thank you for probing with some really deep questions. I enjoyed the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.